Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome everybody back. Officially call this meeting to order of the Driver Training and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. It is 10:02. I'm hoping everyone's doing well. It's been almost 5 months since our last meeting, so it's great to see all of y'all, committee members, the staff. I'm hoping that you all fared well after the holidays and you've just been doing good with COVID-19 still out there. Everybody looks fantastic. Thank you so much. Before we do roll call, I wanted to, on behalf of the committee members and the staff, I want to welcome a new committee member, Dr. Julie Chancellor, to the committee. Doctor, can you, we weren't able to hear you earlier. Is your mic working now?
The dialing service works.
Okay.
So yes, I'm up and going.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Welcome to the committee. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Oh.
I hope you don't mind if I put you on the spot. I'm always curious of the members' background. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm from Kingsville. I work in Kingsville right now. I'm originally from Amarillo. So I'm a West Texas girl, went to WT, and so I'm from the Texas Panhandle, grew up in the Panhandle, and have been a little bit of everywhere, teaching and working through the years, and worked in Houston for a while, was a teacher there, and have been a school principal and done that whole thing for a number of years, and trained by Nina. Nina's the best. And Nina's the same. So, yeah. And I've also served in the Army, spent some time in the U.S. Army, and that's a little bit about my background.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. By the way, committee members and everybody else that's on right now, I want to remind everyone to please mute your mic. And then, of course, when you want to speak, just unmute. So this way we can make sure that we can hear everyone, please. We're going to start off with a roll call this morning. If you don't mind, Delia, good morning. You don't mind taking roll call for us?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mary Lloyd?
Here.
Glenn Winningham?
Here.
Nina Joe Saint?
Here.
Carlos Reina?
Present.
Sam Webb?
Here.
Dr. Julie Chancellor?
Here.
Michael Kelly?
Here.
Victoria Barroso?
Here.
Reginald Thomas?
Here.
David Bruce? He is absent. And Ricardo Benavides, presiding officer.
Present.
And we do have a quorum.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. Thank you, Delia, so much. I appreciate that. Moving on to the agenda is agenda item C, and that's training for the new advisory committee members that are on board now. Mark, it's all yours. Mark? Actually, we lost Mark for now.
No, I'm here. I'm just coming online here.
No, that's quite all right. Let me know if you're ready. We can always keep moving forward.
Oh no, I'm ready. I just was trying to find the button here to
There you are.
unmute myself and turn on my video. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here, and I have a PowerPoint presentation. Can you all see it?
Yes.
All righty. Okay, as the chairman said, that this is training for the new advisory committee member. And what we're going to be talking about very briefly are these three acts: the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. Now understand that this is not going to be an exhaustive review of these acts. We're going to give an overview for folks so that they kind of have a working knowledge of these particular pieces of legislation. Now, we did do this back in October, but as I said, it is GC policy that when we get a new committee member, we like to go through this training for the new member. Okay, we'll start with the Open Meetings Act. And the Open Meetings Act, the purpose of the act is to ensure open and transparent government. And you'll hear the word transparency a number of times through this presentation, because all three of the pieces of legislation that we're going to be talking about all deal with transparency. So the Open Meetings Act requires meetings of governmental bodies like this one to be open to the public, but to be preceded by public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting. So the Open Meetings Act, the provisions are mandatory, and they are to be liberally construed in favor of open government. Now, one of the elements of the Open Meetings Act is a quorum, and a quorum is a majority of the members of the advisory committee as fixed by rule or statute. In this case, it's 11. A quorum of the committee must meet in order to take an official action. Now, if less than a quorum meets, the committee may still have discussion, but may not take official action. And we had something like that occur, I believe, in December 2019, where we still had the meeting, but we didn't take any official action. Okay. Now, another element of the Open Meetings Act is deliberation or discussion, which is basically just the verbal exchange or written exchange among a quorum of the committee, or between a quorum of the committee and another person concerning an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body. So it has to be discussion that's within the jurisdiction authority of the DES Advisory Committee in order for the Open Meetings Act to take hold. Now, another element is a meeting for the Open Meetings Act. And a meeting occurs anytime there's a quorum of this committee that engages in the deliberation or discussion regarding public business or public policy over which this committee has supervision or control, or any time the body takes formal action. Now, another important aspect of the Open Meetings Act is notice. And the act requires advance written notice of the time, date, place, and subject of each meeting held. And the department provides this notice in the form of an agenda, and y'all have that. Notice must be filed with the Secretary of State at least 7 days before the meeting, and must be posted online with TDLR and the Secretary of State. Now, this is important. A board or committee may not engage in discussions about a subject not included on the agenda. So the agenda is your roadmap. This is what you stick to in any notice meeting. Now, what if you find yourself in a social function, a convention, or a workshop? The question here is, does a meeting occur when a quorum of a governmental body engages in discussion about an issue within the governmental body's jurisdiction? Can members ever meet in an informal setting without violating the Open Meetings Act? And yes, you can, but you're limited to engaging in discussion that's incidental to the event that you're attending. The discussion will be subject to the Open Meetings Act if a quorum of members is involved and the members start to talk about or make decisions about committee business or take formal action. So be aware when you're at these social functions and conventions and workshops, what your limitations actually are. So things to remember: always be aware of any situation occurring in which it's outside of a properly noticed meeting for which a quorum of members is present or engaged in discussion. Don't engage in any substantive conversations relating to board or committee business or policy when there's a quorum involved and you're outside of officially noticed and scheduled meeting. And then lastly, beware the walking quorum. And what is a walking quorum? A walking quorum occurs when fewer than a quorum of members engage in discussion about official business and then pass that discussion on to other members. Now, while you may have fewer than a quorum of members participate in the initial communication, and since we have an 11-member board, 6 would be a quorum, but if you have a less than that, subsequent communication with other members will result in a quorum discussing official business outside of a public meeting. So you really want to avoid something like that. Okay. Now, here's an example. A 5-member advisory board, 2 members exchange phone calls and emails talking about an upcoming rule change, and it also exchanged some research on that issue that they've individually performed. One of the board members then takes that information and forwards that information and discussion to another member. Then now the members have engaged in a walking quorum. So you have 3 of the 5 members of that advisory board engaging in a small group discussion outside of a properly noticed board meeting, and that's something that you cannot do. Okay. I have no problem with these controls. Now, how can a walking quorum occur? Where can they occur? They can occur during conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions, and this one here is really kind of important. Emails, text messages, and social media. So if you have a Twitter feed or you have a Facebook page and you start talking about official business on your Facebook page, and you may have 4 or 5 other members of this committee that also are your Facebook friends or follow you on Twitter, you start discussing official business outside of a noticed meeting, you are engaging in a walking quorum, and again, that is a no-no. So be very aware of what you're doing on social media. The best rule of thumb is discuss your business during a properly noticed meeting. That's the best thing to do. So what are the best practices to avoid a walking quorum? To avoid one, members should not meet in small groups, discuss board or committee business, and then communicate those discussions to other members. 2, don't send emails or text messages to a quorum of members regarding official business, even if each email is addressed and sent to each member individually. Just don't do that. Also, don't create posts on social media about board business where there's a likelihood that a quorum of members could participate in those discussions. And lastly, do not ask a quorum of members, even on an individual basis, for feedback or comments on board or committee business outside the public meeting. This is known as polling. And again, it's not something you should be doing. Guidelines for open sessions. As a reminder, the committee is limited to discussing the specific items on the agenda. Again, the agenda is your roadmap. And it would be my job to make sure that you don't stray too far off the roadmap. Sometimes, occasionally, discussions do get into those kind of areas that may be off the agenda. That happens. We're human beings, but I will certainly nudge you back, onto the roadmap. So please limit your discussions to what's on the agenda. During the public comment portion of the meeting that we have on our agenda today, members of the public are given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer may set reasonable limits on the commenters. It's usually 2 to 3 minutes. A member of the public or a member of the board may raise a subject that hasn't been included on the agenda. If that happens, any discussion of the subject may be limited only to a proposal to place the subject on the agenda for a future meeting. And we do have a part on the agenda, I believe it's item I, recommendations for agenda items for next meeting. You can put it on that. You can suggest to be put on a future meeting. So best practices for open sessions. To avoid violating the act based on insufficient notice, members should limit discussions to specific agenda items. avoid having discussions regarding specific agenda items to wander off course into new items not noticed on the agenda. Not to respond or discuss issues that are raised during public comment, but are not on the agenda, and specifically identify for future agendas and communicate those items to staff. Now, with most laws, there are going to be some penalties and remedies, and there's civil remedies as you see down there. That if there's an open meetings violation, any interested person, including the media, can petition the court to stop any actions taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act. And there are also criminal penalties. Members who knowingly participate in a walking quorum or knowingly participate in a meeting that's closed to the public are subject to criminal penalties, which range from a fine of $100 to $500 or confinement in the county jail for 1 to 6 months, or both. Now, in 34 years of practice, I don't think I've ever seen something like this happen, but we do live in some rather interesting times, so you never can tell. So wouldn't want to take that chance. So just don't violate the act. Okay, best practices. Again, avoid communications that involve a quorum of committee members about official business outside of a properly noticed public meeting. And during open meetings, confine your discussions to those items that are on the agenda. And here are some resources that you can use to get more information on the Open Meetings Act. The Attorney General has a fine video that you can watch, and at the end of it, you get a certificate of completion that you can frame and put up on your wall. So, and then there's also the Open Meetings Handbook. It's a great handbook that the Attorney General puts out. I suggest you take just thumb through it and read some portions. It's very, very good. And if you have any questions, there's TDLR's General Counsel's office down there at the bottom. Now, we're going to move on to the Administrative Procedures Act. The purpose of the APA is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure for state agencies and provide for public participation, and there's that word again, transparency, during the rulemaking process. And on this advisory board and many other advisory boards here at TDLR, there's going to be rules being discussed and approved and adopted. And this group plays a huge part in the rulemaking process and very participatory. And we very much appreciate everything that you do to help us make the best rules for the driver education and safety program that we could possibly make. Now, definition of a rule is a statement of general applicability made by a state agency that implements or interprets or prescribes law or policy. So the rule basically interprets the laws that come from the legislature or describes a procedure or practice requirements of a state agency. A rule excludes a statement regarding only the internal management or organization of a state agency and not affecting private rights or procedures. A rule includes a new rule, an amendment to an existing rule, or repeal of an existing rule, and we do all three in this program quite commonly. Now, where do we get ideas for rulemaking? Legislative changes, this advisory board, staff. We also get comments from 4-year rule reviews that we're required to do by statute, and then rule petitions from outside parties. Any interested person may submit a petition to a state agency requesting adoption of a rule. And here are the types of interested persons: a Texas resident, a business entity in Texas, governmental subdivision in Texas, or a public or private organization that's not a state agency but is located in Texas. Now, here's the rulemaking process that we go through. Basically, somebody comes up with a rule idea and we start drafting it. We internally review the rules that are being proposed. There's a review by the governor's office, and then we have our first advisory board meeting where we request permission to publish the rule after there's discussion by the advisory board. And we'll be doing that later on today in item number H. After that, the proposed rules are filed and published in the Texas Register, where there's a 30-day public comment period on those rules. Then we review the public comments and we bring it back to y'all for a second advisory board meeting. If the rules are approved by y'all, then the proposed rules are adopted at the commission meeting, and then the adoption notice is filed and published in the Texas Register, and then there's an effective date of the rules. Generally, it's going to be about 20 days after the rules have been filed with the Texas Register. Now, I spoke earlier about a rule review process. By statute, we have to review our rules every 4 years to make sure that they're still viable rules and necessary for the program. So we look at the entire rule chapter. So we file a notice of intent to review, and the public has 30 days to comment. Then the GC will review those comments and make a recommendation to the commission. Commission will reviews the rule filing and comments and chooses to readopt or not readopt the rule, or and then the advisory board will be presented with any comments and may recommend changes. And here again are the resources for the APA. Again, the Texas Attorney General has a great administrative law handbook that you can use to take a look at more information about the APA if you're interested. And the APA is found in chapters 2001, 2006, and 7. Then you also can go to the Secretary of State's website, and as always, you can always contact the General Counsel's office if you have questions. Lastly, we're going to deal with the Public Information Act. And the Public Information Act, or the Open Records Act, as it's also known, is intended to allow access to information about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and employees. Again, it's a transparency concept that runs through all of this legislation. The Act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to official records open to the public. There are some exceptions. There's quite a few of them, but we won't go through them all right here. Public information includes any electronic communication created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it is in connection with official business. And the Act is construed liberally in favor of granting requests for information that we get from requesters. And here's the basic process for the PIA. We'll get a request from a requester for certain information. If you happen to receive a written request for records or correspondence that looks like a PIA request, forward it to us as soon as you can at the General Counsel's office, Open Records team. And the Open Records team will take that and start working on it, because we have a limited amount of time to respond to an Open Records request. And in some situations, the Open Records team may want to contact you and get information. If they do, please cooperate as quickly as you can. As I said, there's a prompt response to a request. TDLR must respond to the request as soon as possible, but not later than 10 business days after receiving the request. And we can't ask why somebody wants records. We can only ask for clarifications on the request. Now, general rule and common exceptions to disclosure. General rule is that the information that a requester requests is open to them, that information. But there are some things that are exempt from disclosure, and here's just a few examples: date of birth, some email addresses, certain education documents, HIPAA information, that kind of information. So not everything is available to a requester, but we do our best to respond to requesters timely and give them the information that they're legally entitled to. And then lastly, here are the resources. Again, Texas Attorney General has information on the PIA, and they also have a very good handbook out there. If you want to see the actual statutes associated with the PIA, see Texas Government Code Chapter 552. And again, if you have questions, you're free to call us, and we'll do our best to respond to the questions that you have. And that is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that. It's always great to review that information. Okay. Can you remove that? Thanks so much, Mark. You were reading my mind. I appreciate that. Anybody have any questions? Committee members, any questions in regards to Mark's presentation or anything before we move on to the next agenda item? Anyone? All right, excellent. We'll move on to the next agenda item is item D. It's an update and overview of TxDOT's End the Streak Texas Traffic Safety Campaign. I'd like to recognize Bob Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, members, for having us today. My name is Bob Kaufman. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the Texas Department of Transportation. You know, I'm joined by my colleague Beth Hallmark, the Communications Division Director at TxDOT, and whenever we have an opportunity to talk about ending the streak, we jump on the opportunity because it's a passion area of ours at TxDOT, and I want to give you some context around it, if I may. Couple comments, and then I'm going to pass it on to Beth. As of 6 o'clock this morning, there have been 573 traffic fatalities on our roadways this year, and you know, that's too many. If you average that out, it's over 8 per day. Last year there were 3,893 fatalities on our roadways, and that number may change all depending on law enforcement reporting back to us. That's more than an average of 10 fatalities on our roadways. It's just way too many, and we're very concerned about it. I want to take a moment and have you all think back to where you were on November 7th, the year 2000. That was the day, you may recall, when former President George W. Bush was running against Al Gore in the 2000 presidential campaign. That was the last day we had a deathless day on our roadways in the state of Texas. Think about that. It's pretty hard to believe, right? We at TxDOT are committed to ending the streak of daily deaths, and we think it's a shared responsibility, not only among drivers, but TxDOT engineers and how we create safety improvements around the state, law enforcement, and many more. And we so much welcome the partnership with folks and brother and sister state agencies to help us get the word out about ending the streak. In fact, I was on the TDLR's Twitter feed this morning, and I saw a picture that was posted about a traffic crash and a number of fatalities to date. It was either yesterday or the day before. We so much appreciate the partnership. The hashtag is #EndTheStreakTX for future purposes. End the Streak started as a grassroots social media effort back in 2015 by our media relations section at TxDOT. It's now a daily reminder that we're attempting to bring End the Streak and make it part of the Texas lexicon because so many lives have been lost and so many other lives have been touched due to these fatalities. Thanks to one of our transportation commissioners, Commissioner Laura Ryan, her leadership, it's not just a seasonal approach around the grim anniversary of November 7th. It's part of what we do every day now as we present our safety story around the state, whether it's responding to the winter storm from a couple of weeks ago. Just the other day, for example, our executive director was introducing TxDOT to the new transportation committees in the Senate and House of Representatives, and he started with kind of the same comments about ending the streak and why it's so important to us. On any given day, you know, our communicators post safety messages that amplify our traffic safety campaigns. You probably heard of things like Click It or Ticket or Sober Ride Home, some of these national campaigns that we try to amplify through our normal course of work. now we're including end the streak hashtag and end the streak messaging around all of this as well. You know, ending the streak is not just about, you know, trying to create awareness and get people to behave differently and act differently. The Texas Transportation Commission added $600 million to safety improvements on our system during the current biennium. They also decided to embrace what's called our Road to Zero strategy, setting a goal of ending roadway fatalities by 2050 and cutting them in half by 2035. So we're just getting started, because we know that awareness is a real challenge for us. In fact, at a recent Texas Transportation Forum that was held last month, 72% of those who responded to a pulse survey that day said that awareness is one of the biggest opportunities. So we thank you very much for helping us get the word out and helping us share the concept of ending the streak. And I will now pass it along to Beth for a couple comments.
And I'm the director of the Communications Division at TxDOT. We so appreciate talking with you today, and I want to personally commend all of you for the work that you do around traffic safety and driver education. As Bob mentioned, November 7th, 2000 was our last deathless day on Texas roadways. So just to give you a little context on our efforts, we do, as we approach this grim anniversary every year, we do an even bigger push around our End the Streak messaging for October and November of 2020. And a lot of our efforts are focused on social media, as Bob mentioned, and certainly in a virtual environment that 2020 offered to all of us. This was another reason to really amplify our efforts digitally. But in the months of October and November, we had nearly 3 million Twitter impressions, and we reached nearly 700,000 people on Facebook with our focused campaigns. Every effort counts. What we continue to see is testimonial videos and selfie videos are part of our most powerful messaging. And as Bob mentioned, this is a year-round push around End the Streak and the hashtag End the Streak TX. So we so appreciate everything that you do to help amplify that. We also did, at the end of the year, a contest for our digital highway signs. You've probably seen those as you've driven down our roadways, and offered the public a chance to offer some clever sayings that were focused on efforts to end traffic fatalities. We had more than 800 entries in that contest. And one thing we did as part of that was to do our own informal market research. So we asked each of our entrants to answer a couple of questions, and one you might be interested to hear. We did ask, you know, what is your biggest motivator to plan for a sober ride? And to our surprise, the number one by far answer by 60% plus was fear of killing or injuring others. A fear of jail was, I think, only 10%. So very interesting to get inside the heads of our drivers. And also, I'm asking them what kind of messaging would motivate you to do better. And what they told us were, you know, funny, humorous messages that still drove home an important point that we've seen in our own research. You know, trying to break through the clutter, information clutter, we have to get really clever about that. We also have public information officers in each of our 25 TxDOT districts, so covering every part of the state, and we have challenged all of them to pull out all the stops to spread this message locally through every channel that we have. They've done their own powerful videos with those who've lost loved ones. One of our PIOs did a video with some local high school students talking about End the Streak, and they have not seen a deathless day in their lifetime, and that really drives home the point. Also a lot of localized media outreach via TV, radio, print, and working with local school districts and colleges to share End the Streak messages on their digital signs, and in some cases just those old-fashioned yard signs putting up around campuses. And then lastly, we also had one PIO who worked really closely with the local community to have the hashtag added to water bills, citations, and other municipal court paperwork. We haven't slowed down. This is a year-round effort, and we are looking at more partnerships with schools, law enforcement, cities, teachers, students, and all of you. It truly, truly does take all of us working together And, as Bob mentioned, we align with all of our safety campaigns. We have spring break messaging coming up soon. We're going to be focusing on pedestrian safety, and this is a year-round effort. We welcome your ideas, your collaboration, your partnership. I think all of you are at the intersection of probably one of our most important and critical audiences. People learning to drive and really getting in front of what does it mean to be a responsible driver behind the wheel and truly a lifesaver when you're behind the wheel. And I think you're aware of this, but I just wanted to bring to your attention that all of our end-of-street collateral and material and communications products are available online on our website for anybody to use, anybody to download, anybody to amplify, and you can get there really easily. It's just www.endthestreettx.com. That's all from me. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Bob and Elizabeth. I really appreciate the presentation. Wonderful, by the way. Any questions from our committee members for Bob and Elizabeth? Thank you both so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda is on the item E, approval of our minutes for the meeting that we had last year, October the 21st. I hope that you've had an opportunity, committee members, to look at the minutes from last year. Any questions before we move to vote on those minutes to approve them? Any comments? Any questions on those minutes from the committee members? Anybody have any comments at all? Okay, well, I'll consider a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. This is Michael Kelly.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Anybody second? Carlos, thank you so much for seconding that. I appreciate that. Delia, would you mind doing just a little roll call to tally the votes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mary Lloyd,
I approve.
Ann Winningham,
Approve.
Sam Webb,
Approve.
Anna Jo Saint,
A.
Carlos Reina,
Approve.
Michael Kelly,
Approved.
Dr. Julie Chancellor,
Approve.
Victoria Barroso,
Approved.
Reginald Thomas,
Approve.
and Presiding Officer Ricardo Benavides.
I approve.
Motion passes unanimously.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Any questions, by the way, before we move on to item F, members? We're doing good. Item F is public comment. This is where any person wishing to address the committee can. We actually did not receive any public comments for this meeting, so we're going to move right on to the next item on the agenda, and that's item G. These are the staff reports. So the first one we have online is the licensing division with Chloe. Good morning, Chloe.
Good morning, Presiding Officer Benavides and board members. Good to see you guys and glad to know that you're doing well through all the many changes and challenges that we're going through. For personnel updates, we have hired 3 amazing individuals to our team, whom are Mr. Kenneth Clopton, who started December 1st, Mr. Derek Hubbard started January 1st, and Ms. Almisa McConaughey, who started February 1st. They are learning programs and doing very well. So going into our statistic report, for driver's education and safety, we have issued 18 new licenses. We've renewed 235, and their total population is 1,727. For driver safety, we've renewed, completed 4 new applications and 68 new renewals, and the total population is 501. For the DAP program, drug and alcohol driving awareness instructor, we've only issued 1 new license and renewed 5, and that population is 93. And for our specialized instructors, there have been no new licenses issued, and we've renewed 3, and that population is at 9. Board members and presiding officer, that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any
Fantastic.
questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chloe.
This is Carlos Reyna. Maybe I missed it. Were there any new driver education school applications?
That number will be on the education report.
Thank you, Chloe, so much. Anyone else? All right. Our next item is item 2, and that's Customer Service Division, Mr. Nguyen. How are you?
Good morning, advisory board members. My name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm the customer service manager for this program. So I just want to start with our personnel updates. So since the last time we met, we did actually have 2 promotions within our divisions. 2 of our CS customer service reps were promoted to embedded service reps, which means they are assisting in tracking and resolving complex customer issues, and it actually involves your program as well. And they work closely with our licensing team. If the customer calls in about license status, they actually will assist and make sure they follow up with the customer with a resolution. And then if there's something that just takes more time, eventually they will continue to contact the customer with an update. We hired 6 new customer service reps as well since the last time we met, and they do include Spanish, English, Vietnamese, and Mandarin speakers. And also since of March of 2020, our customer service staffs are continuing to work from home. And moving on to our statistics. Since the last time we met, we are still averaging around 2,000 contacts from September to January. Our stats are still relatively low, but the bulk of our contacts from customers is still about the parent-taught guide questions about that, instructor changes, how about what do they need to do, and then our second highest inquiries is about license status. So when customers contacts us about their instructor licenses and what is the status. And then after that, we have some very minor contacts on the lower end. It's usually when we need to navigate customers to the DPS department, and also when we need to assist customers with website navigation. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you so much, Tuan. Great presentation, so appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? Right. We'll move on to item G3, and that's the enforcement division with Natalie Olvera. How are you, Natalie?
Good. Hear me everything good?
Fantastic, thank you.
Hey, well, good morning, presiding officer and advisory board members. My name is Natalie Olvera, and I'm a prosecutor in the enforcement division, and I'll be presenting an enforcement's report to you today. First, we have a few personnel updates. We have some long-term department employees who have left the agency for their well-earned retirement. On November 6, 2020, Prosecutor Ken Sharp retired after 7 years with the department and 13 years of state service. He was on our criminal history team. On December 4th, 2020, Prosecutor Michael Shirk retired after 8 years of service with the department and nearly 2 decades of state service. He was on our transportation team. And we have a few promotions also. 3 attorneys were promoted internally to fill the vacancies created by promotions and retirements. As prosecutors Amanda Barrera, Arusa Nizami, and myself were all promoted to attorney 3 positions. Amanda is on the building, excuse me, building on the mechanical team, and Arusa and myself are on the transportation team. Also on January 4th, 2021, Arthur Arevalo was hired to fill the investigators manager's position. He most recently, he retired from Austin Police Department after nearly 26 years, and more recently worked for Travis County Sheriff's Office and the Texas State University Police Department. And we look forward to his contribution to our team. Now on to the statistics for this program. For fiscal year 2021, the department has opened 32 DES cases and we've resolved 23. About 17% of the DES cases result in disciplinary action compared to about approximately 16% of the cases agency-wide. Majority of the cases in these programs have come from consumer complaints. In the table titled Case Outcomes, which is right below the pie charts, this breaks down what the term disciplinary action means a little bit more clearly. So far in fiscal year 2021, we've had 4 agreed orders. These come about when prosecutors issue a notice of alleged violation, and then the respondent will contact the department and agrees to accept responsibility for the violation, and we end up settling the case. So far, we have assessed a little over $2,000 in penalties, and we have collected 100%. We have not revoked any licenses due to disciplinary action. There have been no license suspensions, and 0 licenses have been revoked or denied due to criminal history disqualifications. Finally, we have informally resolved 19 cases. This can mean a number of things. The case was closed because there was insufficient evidence, a licensee came into compliance, or we issued a warning letter. Again, those are just a few examples of what that can mean. And next are the top alleged violations at opening. And this is what is alleged when a disciplinary case is opened. These cases can be opened for any potential violation, but the next table under that lists the violations that actually resulted in disciplinary action. So for 2020-21 fiscal year, we have unlicensed school and a certificate issue. And now onto the case highlights. These are the 4 cases that we've had so far in 2021 fiscal year. First one was an agreed order that was issued in January 2021, in which respondent accepted a penalty of $750 for operating a driver's school with an expired license. They have now renewed their license and they have paid the penalty in full. The second case is Safeway Holdings. Again, this is a agreed order that was issued in September 2020. Respondent accepted the penalty of $565 for operating a driver education school with an expired license. Again, they have renewed that license and they paid the penalty in full. With Lone Star Driving School, again, this is agreed order that was issued on September 2020. Respondent accepted administrative penalty in the amount of $375 for operating a driver safety school with an expired license. They have renewed that and they have paid their penalty in full. And the last case, I Drive Safely, is also an agreed order that was issued in January 2021, in which respondent accepted a penalty in the amount of $325 for failing to correctly report an original certificate data to the department. Specifically in this case, the respondent issued a certificate of completion to a student with one instructor's name, but then reported a different one to the department. And the respondent has paid the penalty in this case in full. And I'm available if you have any questions on the materials I presented.
Fantastic, Natalie. Thank you so much. Committee members, any questions for Natalie? Thank you for your presentation, Natalie, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's number 4, Education and Examination Division. Michael Strong, how are you, Michael?
Great. Good morning, Chairman and members, especially warm welcome to our new members. My name is Michael Strong. I'm manager for our Education and Examination Division, and I will be giving you a report today. Before I start out, I just want to be clear, there was an error with the importing of the data for 2021. I will be reading you all different stats than what you will be seeing on the screen, and we will get you that corrected copy here. So for driving safety course providers, we have 8 new and 31 ever renewed for 2021. Parent-taught courses is only 11. Driving safety schools, we have a total of 9 new and 161 ever renewed so far in 21. We have no new drug and alcohol driving awareness programs and only 3 renewals. And driver education schools, I know that Carlos asked this question, but we have 10 new schools that have opened with 122 renewals so far for this year. Our emails have gone up this year. There's been for this point in time, and for a lot of various reasons, opening back up, got a lot of questions about social distancing, all the COVID emails and everything else that have come about. So we've seen an influx there as well. If you continue down for our current projects, we have been undergoing a big push here at the department to make sure that all of our forms are updated and become fillable. With DES, we currently have 71 total forms throughout, everything from applications, renewal forms, fleet forms. So there's a huge amount of forms just for this program. We are working through to update all of those as they need. Sometimes it can be legislative updates, but we are making a big push towards making everything fillable online, eventually web forms, everything else, but to make it more convenient. So you don't have to run the post office, print everything out, mail it into us. You can be able to print things off and fill them in, or fill them electronically and get them to you. So you'll still continue to see more and more forms that get updated in your program moving forward. Renewal applications, we again are advising everybody, please make sure that you're trying to get those in as early as possible. We recommend at least 90 days in advance. Our staff is current on our processing times when we get them into our office. So we are working on that. Sometimes there is a delay before we get them, but our E&E staff is working those as received. I wanted to point out as well, as you'll see in the final bullet, there have been 11 schools that have closed in the last year, or in the last reporting period, due to COVID. It's been a hard time on a lot of individuals. We've had a large school that's closed down, impacted a lot of individuals. The bulk of what you see in 11 schools is that school and its branch locations. And we realize that it can be a difficult time. We have worked diligently with those students to find other schools in the area that are able to basically rehome them and able to assist them. We have worked tirelessly to make sure that those students were made whole by getting them their copies of their records so that they can transfer and everything else that we need to do for them. That concludes my report at this point in time, and I will open to any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Great presentation. Committee members, any questions?
Yes, Carlos Reina. Michael, on those 11 closed to COVID, how is that determined that it was, what part of COVID caused them to close?
Carlos, it's an excellent question. I know for some of them, it was just, there were guidelines out there for people to be able to, perform certain functions. Some individuals didn't feel comfortable holding classes during that time, and we're trying to weather the storm. Social distancing, or just sometimes we don't get a reason from them other than just citing that economically it was tough on them. They may not have been able to fill classes, their area, their clientele they serve may not have been comfortable coming in. So sometimes we get an explanation from the schools, as to a deeper detail of why they closed due to COVID. And sometimes it just killed my business this year and had to cover their doors.
Right, because the schools I'm associated with, I found that the difficulty was because of social distancing, we couldn't have the numbers in the classrooms that we needed to really operate at a profit. Were there any schools that closed that did not cite COVID, or do you know?
I would have to double check on that to see if any of those the 11 that are identified are there due to have identified themselves as being closed due to COVID. I'd have to go back and look to see if there were any additional that might have been closed.
Yeah, that's all right, Michael. I was just curious. Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Michael, anyone else? Any questions before we move on? That's great. Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is item number GF, and that's the Field Inspection Division by Ron Grick. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correct, Ron.
As stated, it's a great name for telemarketers. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Benavides and the committee members. I am Ron Gerke, and I am pleased to present for Field Inspections, and I am the North Region Manager. First, we'll cover several personnel updates. Our director, Tanya Guthrow, who had been with TDLR for 36 years, has retired happily. And I want to welcome Eric Beverly as our new director of Field Inspections, effective February 1st. He comes from the Office of Strategic Communication. where he served as Senior Government Relations Officer. Ramon Rodriguez in the East Division has accepted an Inspector 5 position effective November of last year. And February of this year, 2 of our liaisons, Angela Sanders and Sean O'Neill, transitioned over to the Regulatory Program Management Health Professionals team. And I want to say congratulations to each one of these individuals. Here's a comparison of our inspections. As we know, EDLR field inspections stopped all field inspections of March 17th of 2020. We did go back into the field on a limited basis in June, and you can see the numbers in the fiscal years, how we have transitioned up this year. And we're on a good pace, and the majority of those inspections being done have been virtual inspections. Has been another tool for our toolbox and TDLR field inspections to assist our Texas citizens. Part of the problem of the field inspection, was 38 counties were closed down due to COVID, and the majority of those have been lifted effective this week, which allows us to do on-site inspections as well. So we should see an uptick in our numbers across all programs very soon. And that concludes my briefing. Anyone has any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Committee members, any questions for Ronald?
Carlos Reyna again. Ronald, I just want to compliment you on the manner that the virtual inspections have taken place. They've been very efficient, well carried out. I just appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And TDLR field inspections appreciate you. Thank you.
Chairman, you're muted.
My apologies. Thank you so much, Ron. I'd like to, at this time, go to item 6. That's the Executive Office. David Gonzalez, our Deputy Executive Director. How are you, David, today?
Doing very well. Good morning, Presiding Officer, Advisory Board members. Welcome to our new Advisory Board member as well. Glad to have you. So, as Ms. Benavides said, I'm David Gonzalez. I'm Deputy Executive Director of Licensing Services, and I'm substituting for Brian Francis, who's at the Capitol making himself available for testimony at the House Licensing and Administrative Procedures hearing, which should be going on actually right now, I think, as it was scheduled. Joining me today to help present the executive report is Deputy Executive Director of Regulatory Services, Ms. Christina Kaiser. So I will start with the COVID-19 update, and I will do as we have done. I'm going to update you on our external and internal responses to COVID-19. The most important thing is giving everybody a reminder that the latest and greatest information regarding COVID-19 is still found on our website on our main page. You click on that COVID-19 update. There's a couple of links on there depending on what you're interested in. That's going to give you the most information, and we remain a conduit of information from different places. Externally, we got some pretty big news last week. A little announcement by the governor, executive order GA 34 regarding mask and business capacity. So this one's important. The governor's executive order removed state-imposed restrictions on wearing masks and limiting business capacity. Effective as of 12 a.m. today, Wednesday, March 10th, today, there are no state-required COVID-19 operating limits for any businesses or establishment, nor a mask required. I'm going to pause here for effect, make sure everybody's listening to that. We got a lot of listeners on the outside. So no mask required and no operating limits. Now, this is also important. The governor strongly encourages the wearing of mask. Hold on just a moment. But he wants to make sure that it's clear in the executive order that nothing prevents businesses from requiring employees or customers to follow additional hygiene measures, including wearing a mask. So it's a business decision on whether or not to wear a mask or not. It's a business decision on if you want to have enhanced hygiene measures. following CDC, following DSHS. These are important notes to make, and we're clear as well in the governor's executive order. Individuals are strongly encouraged to wear masks wherever it's not feasible to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. And I think, Carlos, you spoke about it earlier. There were some challenges and may have been the result of some business challenges that have occurred over the pandemic. So that's important. That was big news. And again, we are the conduit of this information. We found out just like everybody else last week about this, and we're still absorbing the information ourselves and having to do our own internal. So just to make sure it's clear, driver education schools may choose to require employees or students to wear masks and to social distance. That's their choice as a business. It was also clear in the message from the governor that he's strongly encouraging Texans to use some good faith efforts and all the available resources to follow DSHS health recommendations. There's actually a link to the DSHS health recommendations. And I'm highlighting this portion, this aspect of it, because I think the governor is still counting on us to use common sense and be good citizens and neighbors and show respect for one another, because this thing is real. He didn't say COVID went away with the announcement. He's just relieving some of the restrictions to allow business to open up and Texas to open up. All right, so that was a lot of news. I'm going to stop right there. Any questions related just to that?
Of course, I have a question. So,
Sure.
in other words, the 75% enrollment restriction is lifted, but the school can make their decision whether they want to continue it or not.
You're correct, sir.
Okay, because you know, as far as our part, we're probably going to stay pretty close to that, and we're going to continue with the mask and mandatory in the car, just simply because of the close contact and stuff. But okay, I just need to know because I need to know what to tell our schools. Thank you.
Understood. And I'm trying to pause on this stuff. Hopefully I won't take this long with the rest of the report, but this is important. And I think you're modeling the behavior that's expected of the governor. So thank you for that question, Carlos. All right. If there are no additional questions, I'm going to move on to some of the other external efforts that we've shown. As you may recall, our mailroom and financial services divisions, they weren't immune to COVID or the virus. And we had quarantine protocols. We've had some people that came down with the virus, and we had to shut down a few times. So an important external effort we initiated to help ease the challenges presented is Brian, our executive director, used his authority under the emergency rules adopted by our commission to continue the extension of emergency licenses. It started August 1st, so anybody with the license issued August 1st up to March 15th have been able to work for up to 120 days beyond their expiration date while we work through some of the backlogs that we've encountered because of the backlog in mail that you know, sometimes even the USPS was having difficulty getting mail to us, but with our shutdowns, it created even more of a backlog. That's been a challenge for us. So moving to the internal response, to help with the backlog, a real big internal effort was initiated by the agency, and we've actually asked for assistance from every division of our agency to assist with processing licenses. So whether they're in field inspections, whether they're in IT, if they have some capacity to help with licensing, we asked it of them. Many of the staff that were actually maybe former licensing employees that had previous experience, there are stars right now because they have that previous experience and they could come into it and help right away. But I'm so very proud of all the TDR staff that have stepped up to help with what we are calling a strategic workforce allocation team. It's a SWAT team. They're all rushing in to help our licensing division and to help our customers so that we can process licenses as quickly as possible. And this is not easy. We have 8 separate databases to maintain and process licenses through. So having familiarity with all those multiple databases is difficult, but they are doing what they can to focus on that licensing backlog. So for those that from other divisions that have volunteered to help that may not have the licensing background or experience, we're actually getting them trained. We started a couple weeks ago on getting training done, and they may only be doing a few to start out with, but we're looking forward to them ramping up and being able to contribute as much as they can. Every bit helps. Our customers are worth the time and the effort. And I'm just, I know the focused efforts, they've already shown some progress. My hope is that we will not have to report on a backlog anymore going forward, that the next time that we meet, we're going to be caught up. But it has been a challenge for us, and our agency staff have really stepped up to meet the challenge the best they can. Also, an internal response. In light of the governor's mask directive, we've actually updated our signage at the Ernest O. Thompson building, which is the building by the Capitol. All the signs that used to say mask required now say masks are strongly encouraged, but not required. Now, this is important. We're trying to hold to the governor's directive, and we're making sure to hold to our agency core values. The agency will be showing respect for all those who choose to wear masks and for those who do not, because that is the option that's been provided by the governor. We still have social distancing. We still have plexiglass. I want to remind everybody that our agency employees, many of them are still working remotely from home. Those employees that can't work from home, that their duties still have to be done at the office, we're staggering them. They're in smaller groups. We're separating them so that there's little chance until we get everybody ramped up on vaccinations or opportunities for vaccinations. We're going to still be going through these precautions. The only thing that's changed is the mask is no longer required. It's strongly encouraged. Now, uniquely enough, our E.O. Thompson building is a state-owned building, and we have the governor's mandate. We're enacting it. The North Campus offices that we're at is a privately owned business, and those the property management company, as a private business, has decided that they want to require masks in the common areas, and our staff will be abiding by that. So we've actually got different things going on internally for our own agency, some complexity there. Again, the property management company has decided that they want to ensure the safety of their visitors. There are some clinics and doctor type offices in that space. So I think they're trying to be cognizant of those things, and they made the personal business decision to require masks in the common areas, and we're going to be abiding by that. And I think that's all I have to share on our internal efforts. Another one, the customer service lobby at 920 Colorado Street is still not at this time accepting visitors. It's such a very small space that we're having to share at this time. It's going to remain closed to the public at this time, although we are considering ways that it might be done safely in the future, that we might be able to open in the future. We've been able to accommodate 99% of our customers through our online help and our customer service through emails and phones. But we know there is a small capacity that would like to be able to see us. We actually want that interaction as well. We like working with the customers. So we're going to continue to explore ways that it might be done safely in the future. And that's all I have to share on the COVID-19 update. Any questions at all? All right. I will turn it over to Ms. Kaiser for an update on Sunset.
I double-clicked the button. My apologies. Too much pressure, too much pressure. So let me try this again. Good morning, Chairman Benavides and board members. I am Christina Kaiser. I am, as David introduced me, thank you very much, David. I am one of the deputy executive directors for the agency, and my area of responsibility is regulatory services. And I'll be happy to update you about the latest with the Sunset Commission's review of TDLR. When you met last time, I gave you a briefing about the process as it had proceeded up to that point. So I'm going to try not to repeat all that. I know we have a new member in the House, though, and I'll skim over it briefly. So TDLR has been under review by the Sunset Advisory Commission since about September 2019. The point of a sunset review is to determine if we're still relevant, if we're still adding value to the state of Texas in terms of the purposes for which the agency was originally created. The Sunset staff, after reviewing the agency, issued their report June 4th of last year. There was a public hearing by the Sunset Commission, the actual commission, in December on TDLR's report. And then there was a decision hearing by the Sunset Commission in January. And so at that hearing in January, the Sunset Commission actually voted on all the recommendations that had been offered by the staff in their report. And if you've taken a look at the report, you'll see that there are two kinds of recommendations. There are statute change recommendations, and then there are management action recommendations. And so on January 11th, or excuse me, 13th, I believe, the Sunset Commission voted on all of those, and then their votes were published thereafter. Of note, the Sunset Commission did vote to recommend that TDLR be continued in existence for 12 more years. So that's kind of a big deal, and we're happy about that. That was under issue 1 listed in the report. And also of note for you in particular, under issue 4 in the Sunset staff report, there were quite a few recommendations related to the driver education and traffic safety program. So the Sunset Commission adopted all of the Sunset staff recommendations with the exception of recommendation 4.6, which would have eliminated the minimum driver safety course fee. So that one was not adopted. And then there was recommendation 4.7, which the Sunset Commission adopted with modifications. And the modifications are to create 3 license types associated with the parent-taught driver education program. Those would be an in-person provider, an online provider, and the PTDE, or parent-taught driver education provider. So what comes next? The decision by the Sunset Commission is just one step in the process. It's certainly not the end of the process. The statute change recommendations adopted by the Sunset Commission have been incorporated into a bill and filed with in the legislature just today. So this is breaking news that I was made aware of as I was sitting in this meeting, actually. And that bill needs to now proceed through the legislative process and pass in order for all of those statute change recommendations, including the ones related to your industry, to take effect. And then, of course, if it does pass, TDLR will get about the business of implementing those things. Earlier in my remarks, I mentioned that the staff report contains 2 types of recommendations. There are statute change and then management action recommendations. So management actions are things that TDLR can just do on its own as soon as we're able to do them. After the Sunset Commission vote on January 13th, we did go ahead and start moving on one management action recommendation that relates to your profession, and that was recommendation 4.14. And so I have a little bit of an announcement related to that today. So as a result of this recommendation, the search tool on the website for driver education will now only list licensed instructors and providers, but not the courses they offer. The thinking behind this recommendation by Sunset was that TDLR's website was being used as an advertising medium for driver education schools. And so this change is in the works now. It may be visible on the website as soon as today, later on this afternoon. The mechanics of how to effectuate the change have been worked out by our IT folks, and they are testing it now and reviewing it for security. And it should be visible, as I said, later today, or certainly within the next day or 2. And that concludes my report relating to the sunset review of TDLR. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Mr. Kelly, how are you? I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Great. Hi, Christina. My question is under issue 1, there was concerns about the advisory board's effectiveness and recommendations, including removing advisory board meeting requirements from statute, authorizing TDLR to call meetings as needed, and then authorize TDLR to create interdisciplinary advisory boards to coordinate the expertise and input from industries. how does that affect this advisory board, and what does that exactly mean for the agency?
Okay, let me move around in my notes just a bit. So that recommendation was adopted, and it does not eliminate any advisory board. It does allow TDLR to more control the flow of meetings. And it probably does not really change much because some of the statutory provisions that required meetings at certain intervals were not able to be met for one reason or another, such as limitations on board membership or the like. The ability to do interdisciplinary boards would actually be a very efficient addition to our toolbox, if you will. An example of that is going forward under some other sunset recommendations, we're going to be required to develop risk-based inspection tools for our field inspections and other divisions that conduct inspections. And similarly for enforcement, we're going to be required to do some complaint prioritization tool. And so we've been talking about how the risks associated with certain industries that are similar might be very similar, and so it might be very efficient to have a combined discussion with multiple advisory boards of related industries, you know, like air conditioning and electricians springs to mind, to have that conversation once rather than have multiple meetings separated by a couple of months, and then that just slows down your process. That's how I best see the use of the multidisciplinary is for specific purposes where we need to accomplish something. I don't, and David, definitely jump in if you have some thoughts. But
I guess my question is, I remember when I was working at the agency, we spent easily a month working with all the industries to make sure they were represented on this board. I think at one point we had like 19 possible positions and we narrowed it down to 11 to make it manageable. But would that change? Because it's talking about changing to allow TDLR and not statute to determine board membership, or will the statute with regard to this advisory board stay the same? Because I know there was a concern in making sure proper representation across the different areas of driver education and safety were maintained, that everyone would have some type of representation on this advisory board.
So one of the recommendations that was adopted was a modification, and I'm sorry, I don't have the detail in front of me here, but one of the recommendations that was adopted was a modification of the composition of this advisory board, but that would be a statutory change. So if you're asking whether the composition of the advisory board is still going to be spelled out in the statute, I believe the answer is yes. It just won't look quite the same as it does right now.
Christina, Mary Winston, sorry. I see Nina's hand kind of waving, and I wanted to make sure she was acknowledged if she had a comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Mary. House Bill 1560, if anybody's interested. And if you haven't, you're a little slow if you haven't read it yet. Hit this morning, as Christina said. It does recommend it keeps the statute for the advisory board, but it reduces it to 9 members. And my recall is 3 driving safety people, 3 driver's ed people, 1 public member, DPS person, and I can't remember what the last one is.
I did just find that recommendation, and the one that you didn't mention was 1 driver education instructor.
And the 1 instructor, okay.
Yeah.
My question is there going to be a companion bill for the Senate? Does anybody have an answer to that?
I don't know.
Because that one hasn't made its appearance yet.
I understand. I just got a pop-up answer. There will be a Senate version that's a companion.
Okay. Carlos Reyna, question. Who's carrying the bill, and any idea on who will carry it on the Senate side?
Goldman's carrying it on the
Represent-
House. And the Senate one hadn't showed up, so I'm not sure who's going to carry that one, Carlos.
So Mary Winston TDLR, Nina is, of course, up on top of everything, right? For everyone else who wants to take a look at bills that affect their interest, their board, we do have that on our website. So we have a link that you can click that will give you these actual bill numbers that are live links as well that you can click and read the actual body of the bills. And as soon as that Senate bill comes up, we don't know that information yet, but we're getting that. That's probably going to happen, but that information will be located there as well. This is something that is, it's been a Jeff Copas duty for a while, and he does it fantastically well. After the end of the workday, my phone pings again after he's concluded adding up and adding all of these bills into our database for our website. And for Michael Kelly, great questions. And Michael has a little bit extra insight because he retired from TDLR a few years ago. So as Christina was saying, this allows a better autonomy for the flow of the meetings to come from TDLR staff. If we are to only have a meeting once a year or twice a year or more. It depends on what's going on. We all know that depending on the session and what's going on out there in the world, it depends on which one of our professions that we regulate has activity. And that gives us that ability to call those meetings. Also, many times when we were having to meet in person, we had meetings statutorily required, but that was out of pocket. We know that everyone who so wonderfully volunteers for these meetings gets paid a big fat zero, and you're not reimbursed. So we thank you for your time. But this is kind of like an all-around helpful thing. And Christina brought up ACR, air conditioner repair, and the ELC, electricians, and those overlap in so many of their requirements that they have. So that's just an example of if those boards were brought together as a multidisciplinary board, that may be better. It's not better for staff, and we do the same amount of work, but it's better for members and for the public that they get it in one bite versus having to tune back in for separate bites.
Great.
Sorry for the interruption.
Thanks for the explanation.
Nina?
Christina, were you
One
going to
more?
cover any of the other bills affecting driver training?
No, ma'am. My report is on sunset only. There is more of an executive staff report to come, however, from Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
Nina, sounds like I think you can help David with his report or provide commentary.
Well,
He's bringing that part.
My comment is driver education and driving safety, the adult, the teens, and the driving safety course, we kind of, and I've had this discussion numerous times, we get to be a dumping ground. And not to say the information that individuals want is not valuable, but because we do affect a lot of young people, they decide they're going to throw it into such as recreational water safety. It's very hard to be inclusive about recreational water safety in driver education. It really does not fit, but we were blessed with it and we got to put it in there. And now we have a bill for human trafficking to be in driver education because of our health classes are elective now in public schools, and they didn't give it to health because it would not affect as many students as our courses do. So my main concern is some of these bills is the stance. I know TDLR, it's you have to work hand in hand with the legislature. They are, the hammer, and I totally understand that. But where do we, because we just had a great presentation of In the Streak, which we can sell all day long in our classes, but we're going to put that next to human trafficking. So where do we diminish our main goal? We also have, somebody threw one in for move over law. There's 2 on street racing.
And Nina, this is David Gonzalez with TDLR. You bring up some excellent points. I will just offer you this. It's a great segue to the 87th legislature presentation portion I'm doing, but I am going to keep it short because the information you have, a lot of it is hot off the press. That House Bill 1560, hot off the press. We haven't even had a chance to absorb it, but I expect the legislators will be using us as a resource and ask for input as necessary. The reality is, you as a citizen, you as advisory board members, the public, all have opportunities to give input on these bills, just like we always done. The Schoolhouse Rock comes to mind. I'm just a bill. That doesn't ever get old with me because I love it. But Nina, you bringing up these points, it is important that the industry and these programs be involved and be engaged, because we are in a different place where you don't necessarily get to visit the Capitol just on a whim. You have to pay attention to the committee hearings and what's going on. So appreciate your, yeah, we can always count on you, Nina, to keep up with this. That's awesome.
I just, but that's good. And then they get to the resource and they ask TDLNR, what is your, can y'all do this? And the answer from usually the state agency, whether it's here and there, whatever state agency, oh, yes. It's like, okay. So, I mean, if you look at all that we've got so far, let alone I won't even talk about the bill for foster children, because I have no clue where y'all are going to get the money to pay us back, which means we may not get paid back if we have to do that. A whole different.
We hear you, Dinah. We hear you.
On top of the time restraints of where do we take to give and take and so forth, we've got another 2-3 hours information that we may have to put in our courses. That's a 6-hour course.
This is proposed legislation. David Gonzalez, TDLR. This is proposed legislation. It still has to go through the process, Nina. And I will tell you this, with everything else, ERCOT and energy, all the other COVID and pandemic related stuff, it's going to be a lot of work that has to get done to make these things happen. Remember, we're getting to the end of the session, or at least the end of the filing bill period, the bill filing period. And so everything's going to be going in. These are going to have higher numbers, not lower numbers. And so they may or may not make it through. But it is incumbent upon the public and industry members to keep tabs on this, just like we will. I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind, Nina, I'm going to go ahead and go into my report.
David, can I, and Mary Winston, TDLR, I want to thank Nina. She's always on top of it, as I said before. And this is the forum that she's, as a board member, that she's expressing concerns about getting the business of driver education and safety handled. But I also want to throw in something that our former executive director said that gives me a lot of peace and calm when these things kind of get ramped up. We're going to prepare, but we're going to wait to worry. So Nina, you keep preparing. Contact us if you have any questions. We're preparing on our end for what comes our way. But we're going to wait to worry. So with that, I know you have another comment probably after that one, Nina.
Well, that yeah, we've waited to worry a lot of times, and that doesn't help us. We get caught in the loop and so forth. But what I have to do for my constituents, if I'm asked by our industry, well, what did you do about it? I have to say I did something.
That's right.
Because that's who I'm representing. So that's why I bring it up. Not to be derogatory or anything else, because you ask a lot of people on this board, because there's other that are up to date also. I'm not the only one. But they do know who to call.
You've trained them all, Nina.
We have to speak up.
Yes.
So that's my part. I did my part. And if we get these, we get them. That you don't do the voting at the legislature, or we put those people in office, unfortunately, sometimes, and we have to deal with it. So, but thank you so much for allowing me to vent.
Awesome.
Thank you, David.
You said a mouthful. Thank you. David?
Sam.
Hey, Sam Webb, I appreciate that. Christina, did you say that the sunset advice, everything they suggested has been put forth in a legislative activity? I mean, they put this in this 1560. I'm furiously trying to read it right now.
Yes, the recommendations that were adopted by the Sunset Commission were included in that bill. And it's a long bill. It's like 120 something pages long. And I believe the recommendations related to your program start on about page 80. And it is Article 4 out of 5 articles by which the bill is separated.
All right. Well, I just want to say that, I've been following the sunset recommendations. I've made comments. I've attended their meetings. Didn't have a chance to make comments other than written comments. I saw nothing changed from it. And so it's very concerning. And then the legislative process is so difficult as just a person of the public to get in there and say, hey, you've got a 180-page document here that's been going on for 6 months or a few years of sunset review. I've tried every time to step in there and make any comments, but did TDLR know? Did y'all know Goldman was going to file it this morning? Was I the only one who didn't know about this coming out?
So, Mary Winston here. And we can kind of take it offline to get a little more updates. And honestly, no, we don't know these things. They file when they file, and we operate at the behest. And I think Nina said, used a great word. When we're blessed with it, we handle it. But we know what we do know is that there are things that are going to be filed, and it's ramping up because that deadline's coming, as Nina said. So it's not that we really know, but if you want to kind of discuss it a little bit more, if we can, or what we can, they don't tell us these things. We kind of know when you know. And Brian is at the Capitol to offer his support in whatever happens. So we're watching hearings, right? We're watching the schedule like everyone else. But because it's our job that, you all have your jobs and you have your professions that you're out there doing. This is what we do. So we have folks who are specifically hired to study this. Even though we don't know something up front, we're on the ground and like in the process as soon as we can get there. But Sam, if you want to chat a little bit more with government relations, we can definitely talk to you. But to be honest, we know they don't call us and say, is that okay? Or would you like it? We just get what we get, but we kind of keep an eye on it. Because we don't have to then go and give driver education classes, right? So this is our life. Hopefully that gives you some answer, and you can always contact your legislators, but we just don't have that magic red phone that they call us. No.
I appreciate that, Sam Webb. Again, my only last question is, what is the deadline for bill filing this section?
It would be March 12th.
Friday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Friday, yes.
All right. So I really enjoy this vigorous discussion, even before I get to the topic of 87th legislative session. It actually started out as a slow session because we had leadership changes. They're trying to work out who's in charge. There was direction they had to provide on how meetings were going to be held, whether it was going to be mask on, mask down, whether it was going to be in person or virtually. Someone's got their microphone on if they could mute. All these things were happening, and it created a little bit of a slowness at the beginning. Things are definitely moving along now. My last count or last notice that we got from Mr. Kopis that they referenced before is that we're over 300 bills that may have some effect on our agency. More than just driver education safety, all the other bills, anything from cannabis to sports betting, all these bills that may affect our agency. We are expecting that the leadership may eventually, hopefully, reach out to us to ask for our input, whether or not any of these bills would actually work with our functions and alignment. No matter if it works or not, we have to find a place for the language that's put out there. So Nina, to your point, you have to be active, you have to stay involved, and you definitely are, and actually your peers have been great advocates for y'all's industry because you are staying on top of it. We're trying to keep up as well, along with all the other bills and programs that we're responsible for. So it is important. If you haven't gotten on to Texas Legislature Online, that is what we utilize. And we also have a Jeff Copas in the background, along with other staff in government relations, Mr. Steve Bruno, formerly Eric Beverly, Jeremiah Kuntz. All these individuals are trying to track this to give us a heads up. We can't necessarily stay ahead of it. We're not going to necessarily be asked, hey, is it okay when we file our bill? That's not what they do with us. They move forward because they're trying to get their work done. And we are often reactive on a lot of these things because we aren't included in the ground decisions. It's up to the legislators. We have, this is important, so I'm going to just take another moment to talk about House appropriations and Senate finance hearings have been held. Those are important because they decide the monies that may come to our agency. It's exceptional items that we were asking for budget consideration. The most significant exceptional items, there was 4, but the most significant exceptional item we requested from both the House Appropriations and Senate Finance, the one that affects driver education safety, is we're asking for continued funding for the new Texas licensing system. We've got funding the last legislative session to start it out, and we've got progress. We've been working with the vendor Red River to establish frameworks and really talk about how it's going to look in the future. With 8 disparate systems, combining them into one is going to make us much more effective and efficient, and everybody knowing the same system instead of having to know 8 different systems has great promise for us. So that is the one that I wanted to bring y'all's attention. That exceptional item went through House Appropriations, Senate Finance hearings, and it seemed positive. There's no guarantees. They haven't written the check yet, but we held those hearings, and Brian Francis did a phenomenal job representing us. There was lots of questions related to other things. Human trafficking questions came up, things related to our customers and our backlog, the challenges we've had. So some of those questions came up, and we had to respond, and we'll continue to respond as these bills work through committee. And that's all I'm going to share. We spent enough time on executive report. Are there any questions related to the session other than what's already been discussed?
This is Michael Kelly. I want to add, Sam, you had asked a question, Nina, you did as well. Having worked for the agency in government relations, what I have found is the agency generally has a good reputation with lawmakers. I also have found, I had previously worked for the Department of Public Safety and for 3 state senators, that when it comes to the sunset process, if you can meet with whoever files that bill, and talk to their staff, oftentimes they're going to be very open to hearing what your concerns are. You got to remember the Sunset Advisory Commission is making broad recommendations for the original bill, but then oftentimes the bill gets changed quite a bit by the time it gets to the final stage. So don't feel frustrated like as if you don't have a chance to voice your concern. And I would start with whoever the author is. I would also go to whomever your state representative and state senator is, if that's not the same person, to make sure they know of your concerns. But don't feel like you don't have a voice, you don't have the opportunity in this great democracy we have called state government for you to be able to voice your concern. Oftentimes that means going to meet which staff member that is that's overseeing that sunset bill so that they can in turn share that information with their boss. So don't ever feel like you have to talk to the actual member. Sometimes that staff member is your key because they'll take that information back to their boss and they'll work through those changes. But I encourage those concerns that Nina has, that Sam has, anyone else, please share them with your lawmakers. If you don't, then democracy doesn't work. And I found oftentimes if you can rationally present why there's a concern about what's been proposed, they'll be willing to make that change.
David Gonzalez, TLR, excellent advice, Mr. Kelly, former employee, Mr. Michael Kelly. Thank you very much for that guidance to your peers. Mr. Gladney, I saw your hand up.
Yes, for the record, Mark Gladney, General Counsel's Office. Nina brought up a number of bills that concern the industry, and I wanted to point out the numbers of those bills that, if some of you wanted to take a look at them. House Bill 985 deals with the human trafficking issue. House Bill 962 proposes an increase in the behind the wheel instruction hours from 30 to 50. HB 3212 deals with the street racing issue. And HB 3319 deals with the move over or slow down law on passing.
Mark, I want to thank you. Mary Winston here. I want to thank you for that. I want to reiterate that because that's really quick and actually not on the agenda, but it's good information. And I want to reiterate that that information is found on our web page, and it's going to actually talk about driver education. We'll talk about the subject you're looking for and those bills. It's pretty easy to read. So you can go now whenever you get a chance following the meeting to take a look at these specifically, and there are active links to the bills. So thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for that discussion. And I know, Mark, if it pleases our chairman, I know we are now at agenda item H, and that is Mr. Gladney's agenda item.
Thank you so much, Mary, and everyone else. Before we continue, we are going to take a quick little break, but I just wanted to make sure that anybody have any questions before we take a quick little recess. I want it to be quick. I hope you all don't mind. We're going to take a nice little, we'll do 9 minutes exactly, and then we'll come back with your permission. Okay, we are now in recess. meeting back to order. I think we're all back. It is 11:54 and we are back. Before we proceed with Mark and the discussion, any questions before we move forward? Okay. Yes, go right ahead, David.
I just want to make sure and clarify for the record, this is David Gonzalez with TDLR. There's over 340 something bills that have been filed like in this past week. We're tracking for our agency 228. I want to make sure that that number is out there. So it's going to go up between now and Friday, I expect. I want to make sure that number is clear. And again, the best place, our website, that link, or Texas Legislature Online is the best place to find those links. For the ones that we're tracking, our website is best. And I did not get to give the report on the numbers. If you don't mind, I'm going to do that very briefly. For our website for driver education safety, there's 47% of the visitors access our website from a desktop computer. 51% did from a smartphone. There was 2,464,716 views since September 1st through February 2021. That's an average of 13,617 per day. That is a phenomenal number. So our website, what we're pushing through our website, the information we get out is very critical. I just want to make sure that people are aware of those numbers, and that, to me, we've got some success there. And that's all I had, Presiding Officer.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is item H. And this is the discussion and possible recommendation on the proposed new rules at 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 84. Chapter C, Chapter D, and Chapter L. We actually had discussed this on our last meeting, and I guess we're here again. So I'll just recognize Mark. I'll go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. As the Chairman said, this is a revisit of the rule package from the October 21st, 2020 meeting. As some board members had expressed some concerns, mainly about the proposed DES program guides actually, but mainly it was just one, and it was dealing with the program of organized instruction related to minor driver education. So after that October 21st meeting, we quickly got to work. And staff and the curriculum work group, which consisted of staff and committee members, Thomas, Saint, Knapp, Bruce, and Rena. We got together and started making some changes to mainly the program of organized instruction, as I said, for minor driver education. The rules themselves, when they were presented to the committee at the last meeting, there didn't seem to be too much objections related to those, but I'll get into those in a few minutes. As a refresher, the proposed rules complete the implementation of House Bill 105 by requiring the curriculum of specialized driver safety courses to include information related to methods of safely operating an oversized or overweight vehicle. Now, these proposed rules also implement a recommendation by the Curriculum Rules Work Group to transfer rule text applicable to the required course content and minimum instruction requirements for driver training courses from Chapter 84 to department-created program guides for use by program licensees. This rulemaking is consistent with the governor's initiative to simplify rules and everyday functions for state licensees. So as I said, we started pretty quickly after the October 21st meeting. The work group met in November, on November 3rd to be exact, to discuss the program guides and discuss the concerns that were raised at the meeting, and made some changes to the program of organized instruction for minor driver education. We distributed the rules to the work group. We worked on them. We worked in November, we worked in December. Actually, during Christmas break, we disseminated the rules to the curriculum work group. And then we finalized the rules and the program guides in January of this year. Now, the main purpose of this rulemaking is to amend Chapter 84 of our rules, subchapters A, C, D, L, M, and N, to streamline and reduce the size of the rule chapter, which we're always trying to do. We're trying to reduce and have our rules more efficient and clear, and to efficiently organize and simplify the creation, distribution, and instruction of program curriculum by licensees. So the curriculum work group created a plan to reorganize the rule text into a format that would be more easily accessible and understanding it by transferring that rule text in subchapters M and N to program guides. And what we did is the work group drafted 4 additional program guides to accompany the already existing program and organized instruction, which we're giving an acronym POI-DE for the minor and the adult driver education courses to enable the transfer of this rule text in compliance with the Secretary of State's rules. And we're going to adopt by reference these program guides into our existing administrative rule chapter 84 for driver education and safety. So the program guides are called, the additional ones are called the Program of Organized Instruction for the Adult 6-Hour Driver Education Course, also known as the POI Adult 6-Hour, the Course of Organized Instruction for the Driving Safety, Driving Safety course, and it's called the COI-Driving Safety. The Program of Organized Instruction for the Drug and Alcohol Driving Awareness course, and then the acronym for that is POI-DAP. And the Course of Organized Instruction for the Specialized Driver Safety course, the COI-Specialized Driving Safety. Those are the 5 program guides that we created. Now, to be clear, this rulemaking only seeks to transfer the curriculum requirements from the rule chapter and put them in the guide. So we're just taking the rules from subchapter M and N and putting those right into these guides. Just a simple transfer. And then those guides will have the force of rule. They're adopted by reference in our regular rules. And so they'll be incorporated right into the rule chapter. Now, as they are rules, if there's any amendments that need to be made to the program guides, we will still be required to go through the standard rulemaking process. And as with other programs administered by the agency, as I said, we're just taking this rule text and putting it in an easier format for licensees to use in their everyday operations. That's the whole long and short of this rulemaking. So I'm going to share my screen related to the text. Where did it go? I'm trying to find the rules here. And they were here a few seconds ago. Okay. And here they are right here. Can everybody see this?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to point out some of the main amendments that were made by the work group. And we'll address any comments or questions that you have after the presentation. So we're going to start at 84.3, and you also have these in your packet today. New 84.3, this is a new rule, entirely new rule. It's not an amendment. And it's basically the materials are adopted by reference. This is a requirement from the Texas Secretary of State. We have to put this rule information in there and inform the public that these new program guides are adopted into this rule chapter by reference. So that's what you see here. The notice to the public that these particular guides, and you'll see all 5 of them, the POI DE February 2021 edition, the POI Adult 6-Hour 2021 edition, COI Driving Safety, COI Specialized Driving Safety, and the POI DADAP. That's what's happening in that particular section. Okay. Now, skipping over to subchapter C. I'm trying to move this a little faster. Here we go. In subchapter C, we start making changes in this particular area, 84.44. And all we're doing in subchapters C and D is updating the references to the new program guide. So you'll see this in B2, where we note the supervising teaching responsibilities as prescribed in the POI-DE in the classroom phase of the POI 6-hour. Just describing where these responsibilities for the supervising teacher are and what they can do. Again, just taking that and referring the people to those particular program guides. Okay. And you're seeing it here again under the driver education teaching qualifications. And all we did is just made that change in 4 to refer people to what a driver education teacher's qualifications are in the program guides. We just cited to the new program guides. Again, for teaching assistant qualifications and for rehabilitative driver education in-car instructor responsibilities. Okay. And then as we move to 8445, again, just adding in the acronyms for the program guides in 84.45. And then here in 8450, again, reference to the POI-DE. That's the program guide for the program of organized instruction for minor and adult driver education. This particular program guide has been in existence for several years. Okay. Now, moving to subchapter L. Well, here's another reference to the POI-DE. And then there was some minor cleanup here, writing out the words of numbers as opposed to just putting the numbers in there. Okay. Okay. Now, subchapter L, 84.400. This was a change that was suggested by committee member Kelly. And basically what we did was we cited to Chapter 418 of the Texas Government Code to allow the department to take an enforcement action for a violation of an executive order issued by the governor. So we added in the reference to Chapter 418 of the Texas Government Code. Okay, now in subchapter M and N, this is where most of the changes have occurred. And as I said, what we basically did is we are taking the curriculum rule language out and putting it in the program guides. And I will show you what we've been doing as soon as I can get to that section. Right here. So the minimum course content, we took the minimum course content guidelines or rule text out of the rules and what you see here deleted. Course introduction, license to drive, right of way, etc. All of that was transferred to the program guide related to adult and minor driver education. So this will be in the POIDE. Okay. Okay. Hope I'm not giving anybody vertigo from flipping through this so fast. Okay, now for the next section, 84.501. Oops. For AMI schools, again, what we were doing there was just basically taking the references and transferring them to the program guides, the acronyms for the program guides. Okay, so that's the changes in 501. I'm trying not to skip. Okay, 502 is for driving safety. And for the minimum course content, that's where we made the changes as soon as I can get to it. Here we go. So this information in subpart D, this is the curriculum information that is being removed from the driving safety section of the rules and put into the driving safety program guide. So you're going to see that we're going to reduce the word count in this rule chapter significantly. Okay. And all that information will be in the driving safety program guide for a licensee to take a look at and craft their course accordingly. Okay, specialized driving safety. There's the addition right there. According to HB 105, we added in that information about safe operation of a motor vehicle near oversized or overweight vehicles. Okay, here again, minimum course content, we took the curriculum for specialized driver safety and moved it into its own program guide. Okay. Moving on to the next section. Okay. AMD for driving safety courses here too. And all this was just simply adding in the acronyms related to that particular program guide. Okay. And this is dealing just with the testing requirements. Okay, for the DAP, same thing. Minimum program content. This is the curriculum. We moved it to the DAP program guide. ADM for DAP was just simply changing the references to the acronyms for the program guide. Okay, so for 84600, we went in, and here's all the curriculum information associated with the POIDE, the program of organized instruction for the minors driver education. And as you can see, we took from module 1 to module 12. And we took that information and we put it into the program guide, thereby eliminating a huge swath of words in the rule chapter. So, you know, all this still exists. It exists in the program guide. It just will not be in the rule chapter, but it still has the same force of rule. Okay. Now, after the meeting in October on this rulemaking, as I said, some board members raised questions and was mostly dealing with the POIDE. Yeah. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to bring up the POIDE for you. I'm going to stop sharing this document for now. Well, actually, why don't we just stick with this rule, the rule chapter right now, and I'll ask questions as to whether or not y'all have any questions on what was presented related to the rule amendments. Are there any questions? I like that. This is great. Okay, then we're going to move to the one program guide that seemed to cause a few questions, and I want to try to bring that one up. So I'm going to try to stop sharing this one right here, and I'm going to try to share the actual program guide if I can find it. And can everybody see that? Can everybody see that program guide? Okay, I wasn't hearing anybody. All right. Okay. Okay, so this is the POIDE. This is the the program guide that's actually been in use for a number of years before we even started to make amendments to it. And in the October 21st meeting, there were some issues that were raised, not very many. This was actually the only program guide that the committee had any issues with. The other four, there were no objections noted. So what I want to note is some of the changes that we made. So I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. One of the things that we did was we wanted to make a clarification on the minute calculations associated with how much extra time was available for use on any of the other modules to satisfy educational requirements for the course. And there was approximately 120 minutes left when everything was said and done. And we wanted to make sure, and Nina brought this up, she wanted to make sure that there was a notification to folks that there was some additional time left for in-classroom instruction. The total amount of time is 1,920 minutes, but when you go through the minimum time requirements, they total 1,800. So that's about 120 minutes that were left. And now these are minutes that you can use to teach any particular curriculum topic that you wish to do. So what we wanted to do is make sure that people were very much aware of that. So we made sure that we put that information in there, and we bulleted for folks so that they would know that was in. Yeah. And then what we did is we cleaned up the rule language a little bit more to match the rule language in the actual rule, dealing with behind the wheel instruction and observation. And we did that a little farther down here. But we just wanted to make sure that we were consistent with that. You know. Then when we got the charts, there was some question. Yes.
Excuse me, Miss Nina has a question.
Sure.
Mark, did you want us to bring up things as you go or wait till you finish your presentation?
Bring them up as a go.
So if you can back up to that first page, the introduction. Yeah, should it be the, in parentheses under Program of Organized Instruction, should that be POI-DE?
You are correct there, and we will make that change.
Then in the second paragraph, the first sentence at the end, it says for each phase of teenage driver education. Again, this is a minor adult driver education. It's just not limited to teens. Which you say in the first paragraph, minor/adult. I think that needs to be consistent.
Okay, and what you said second paragraph?
Right, second paragraph, the end of the first sentence line.
End of the first line. Oh, okay. Minor/adult?
Right.
But who's noticing?
I did.
We want to make sure we get this exactly the way you all want it, okay?
Thank you, Nina. Keen
yes,
eye.
Thank you very much. Now, the other thing that we wanted to do, and there were some questions that were kind of raised, was about the charts. I think the original version, and I don't know whether it was Nina or Carlos or maybe both, that were talking about how maybe confusing our charts were, because we were including the classroom time frames, and then we were including the behind the wheel instruction and behind the wheel observation, and then simulations. So it just sort of seemed like chart overload. You know? So what we did, what the work group did was try to simplify the look of the chart that you're seeing right now, and then remove the chart associated with simulation, and basically just put a reference in there to 84.500 B1R. And in that way, the schools that actually use simulators, and I understand there's not very many of them, they can fashion their course in the way that they want to, but within the framework of the rule as to how to deal with their simulation instruction. So we transferred this kind of simplicity to all the modules from that we're dealing with in-car observation and behind the wheel and simulation instruction. So that was another change that we made.
Mark, can you go back to page 8?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, page 8, it says it's module 2 driver preparation. That should be module 1 traffic laws. So that whole page is incorrect.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay. Okay, I want to go down to module 2, see whether or not we
Yeah,
doubled up.
yeah,
We
module
may have
2. Yeah, it's correct in module 2.
Okay, so we may have just doubled up on that. We can make that change.
Art,
Yep, sure did.
Mark, Dr.
Yes.
Chancellor, Dr.
Yes.
Chancellor has a question.
Yes.
regarding consistency and ease for the patrons, one of the concerns that I have, I conduct concurrent classes, and often, they're ordering the course 101 or whatever their choice is, the parent guide, in addition to, for the log sheets for the 7 observation and 7 behind the wheel, in addition to the 30-hour log. And it's very cumbersome for the patron to read through all of that. Can we somehow streamline that and make it easier for the concurrent person who's just needing those log sheets?
Okay, you kind of broke up there a little bit, so I didn't hear everything. Could you repeat that?
For the concurrent course, like I teach just the classroom phase and then leave the behind the wheel up to the parent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a rural area. Most parents, can teach the 7 hours.
Right.
So they're both packets. They order the course 101 typically, and then the other, the $20 and the $30 packet. When they receive both of those, it's very cumbersome for them to go through and find the 7-hour log sheet in addition to the 30-hour log sheet. And in doing so, I'm hoping to find a way to streamline that for the concurrent patrons.
Okay. So I think we had talked about that in here. I'm trying to find it right now. Is this in regard to the log, the log entries? How to fill out the logs for?
Yes, sir. Each log sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, they're ordering. It's just very cumbersome. It's doable, but they have to go through a lot of. If we could just streamline it.
Okay, because I know we had a conversation with regard to that in here. I'm just trying to find it here real quick. That's okay.
Mark, I don't think we included the 30 hours in this document. Or a breakdown of them.
Well, the breakdown for the hours is still going to be in the rule chapter. You're talking about the 7, 7, and 30?
Right, but like we broke down for the 7 and 7, but we didn't do a breakdown for the 30 in the POIs.
But they couldn't they not follow just what's in the rule and the statute with regard to that?
Yeah, I mean, CDLR has another document for that.
Because the education code in 1001.101 does the breakdown of the 7, 7, and 30.
This is not a saying again. Does Dr. Chancellor have an example?
No, I don't.
Nina or
issue for another day.
pardon?
This is not on the agenda. I believe it's an issue for another day.
As the as a POIDE exists right now as it's proposed, Dr. Chancellor, would it work for your concerns for now, and it may be something that we can address later on?
I believe so. Yes, sir. We're not. It's not directly related to today's agenda, so we'll need to address it later.
Because I can tell you one thing, we will be in a lot of rulemakings, in the next year or so, and we can modify the program guides, accordingly if there does seem to be a problem. Carlos or Nina, is this something that?
That's Carlos, right? I think it is something that we can't wait on.
Okay. Okay. And the 30 hours, it's my understanding in looking at the rules and the law, that's not necessarily something that is required of the schools. In 1001.101B3, that instruction can take place. A parent can do that, correct?
This is Carlos. They actually did not. The statute did not assign responsibility to anyone with regards to that, actually.
Well, the statute actually assigns some responsibility to an adult who meets the requirements of Section 522.222 of the Transportation Code. So that's where the responsibility lies. It doesn't. The statute doesn't say the school, though.
Yeah, to any of the educational institutions or schools and so forth, they weren't assigned with that. Just like the Department of Public Safety, really not assigned with reviewing. No one is assigned to review the form, actually.
Okay. So for purposes of today, this is still something that the way that the POIDE is proposed right now, this is something that we could still move forward with. You think, Carlos? Okay. Alrighty. Are there any other questions on the POIDE? I know I haven't gone through the entire POIDE because it is rather lengthy, but it has been included in your packets. And I was just wondering if there was any other questions related to the POIDE. As I said, we didn't have to make too many changes. The work group was great in making the changes that they did make. And as I said, we got a lot of great input from the advisory committee members that were on the work group. So are there any other questions related to the POIDE?
Yes, Mark, this is Nina saying again, page 51.
Okay.
And I will say kudos to the staff because this is my last comment. That's pretty good compared to before. Okay.
Well, I mean,
So,
as I said, we have a lot to thank the committee members for in this creation of this, or actually the amendment of this document. Y'all, as we told you, this is your document. This is your set of program guides, and we wanted to make sure that we satisfied as many concerns that y'all had as we possibly could.
in 8.1.5, there's a dash between 25 and minutes.
Oh, I see it.
That's the only place in, yeah, if you could, that's the only place in this whole document that's got that. So if you can remove that dash, that'd be great.
This is Carlos Reina. Nina, do you sleep at night? I mean, because you've got eyes that just, oh my gosh.
Say, get up and look and see what bills were filed.
Okay. Are there any other concerns about the POIDE or any of the other 4 program guides that we're proposing in this rulemaking?
Mark, this is Nina again. I did go through the timing, the in-car timing and all the timing for the classroom here and all the other guides, and they did meet the rules. So commend everybody on getting that, because that was one of the issues we were trying to get straightened out. So as far as I'm concerned, for this moment in time, because it could change in the next second, I'm good.
All right. And you know, to be quite honest, there will be changes. You know, so you know, staff certainly looks forward to working with the committee members of the curriculum work group as well as the entire committee in working through making these changes. This is by far not the last that we've seen these program guides or certainly the rule chapter. Yeah. So I have written down the changes that are proposed, and that was the POIDE at the very beginning, the very top, the acronym on page 1, and then adding in minor/adult instead of teenage in the second paragraph, first page. Changing on page 8, module 1, traffic laws, changing that chart. And then on page 51 at 8.1.5, removing the hyphen for 25 minutes. Okay, so those are all the changes that are being proposed. And I haven't heard anything on the rules, so I'm assuming that the committee is fine with the rules as they stand. Well, hearing nothing, I'm greatly appreciative to y'all. Staff recommends a motion to approve for publication in the Texas Register, this rulemaking package, including the program guides with the changes that have been proposed by the committee.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that. Okay, committee members, do we have any questions before we proceed to consider a motion to recommend this approval to publish? Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, I'll consider a motion then to recommend approval on these proposed new rules and amendments as mentioned by Mark, with those changes, as those small changes for today.
Nina, if you would, please.
Nina, you're muted. I'll consider a motion.
Yeah, I will recommend, we'll move to approve the rules and the POIs and COIs as amended.
Carlos Wayne, I second it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, we have a motion on the floor here to recommend approving these proposed new rules and amendments as mentioned. Delia, would you like to do roll call on the votes?
Yes, sir.
And Mark, my apologies. Mark, do you don't mind removing that so that I can see the rest of the members? I don't know if you still want to have that on there, but you can remove it for now if you don't mind. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that. Delia, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mary Lloyd?
Approve.
Lynn Winningham?
Approved.
Sam Webb?
Approved.
Nina Joe Saint?
Approved.
Carlos Reyna?
Approved.
Michael Kelly?
Approve.
Dr. Julie Chancellor?
Approved.
Victoria Barroso?
Approved.
Reginald Thomas?
Approved.
And Presiding Officer Ricardo Benavides.
I approve.
Motion passes unanimously.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much to the work group that worked on those, and of course, everybody else. We know who they are that had a lot of incredible input on that. Fantastic. Anybody care to comment or say anything before we move on to the next agenda item? Mark, thank you so much for your hard work as well. You're muted, by the way.
Thank you very much, committee members.
Fantastic. Okay, the next item is item I, recommendations for agenda items for our next committee meeting. Committee members, anybody have any new items that we could certainly consider for the next meeting?
This is Carlos Reyna. I'd like to suggest that maybe we add discussion about the work group composition, because I think we've lost a member and we'd like to see about getting Miss Dr. Chancellor involved.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. Do we need to take a vote on that? I mean, I agree. I think that we definitely need to add that to the agenda item. Delia?
Chairman, we
Yes.
don't need to have Mary Winston, we don't need to have a vote on it. These are just, if I'm understanding correctly, that we're on recommendations for agenda items, and we'll take that as the first recommended item.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes, Michael.
Mary, is there a requirement that we actually have an agenda item and vote to put Dr. Chancellor in a work group? I mean, why can't the chairman just appoint that person?
Chairman can appoint her. I don't want to put that pressure on him today, per se, but he can just take time and you can appoint. What we'll do, Michael, you're right. There's not a requirement for a motion for that. Chairman, that is at your discretion. But this will give you time to take a look at the work groups and to ask Dr. Chancellor's interest in which work group she'd like to serve on. And so that can be, by the time of the meeting, you'll have had a chance to look at all of those work groups and kind of get that that information in your mind of who you want to appoint, because a motion is not required. We also, as another agenda item, will, as we know that these rules are going out now for publication. So what is it time for? Public comments to come back, right, Mark? So we will, I think Nina's gotten us pretty straight on anything we missed, but for other eagle eyes out there, they get a chance to take a look at this, they get a chance to make comments on it, and those will come back to the committee. And so that'll be another agenda item at that time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. I welcome any recommendation on appointing a specific committee member for any group and everyone else with that in mind. Thank you so much. Any other considerations, recommendations for agenda items before we proceed on to the next item? Okay. The next item is the discussion of date and time for the next committee meeting. I don't know if we have any recommendations. Delia, anything on the next?
No, sir, because we have to publish the rules and get feedback from the public. And so we'll wait until we get the okay from council. And then I can poll the board.
Perfect. I guess we'll just wait for you to contact us. Thank you so much. The next item is really adjournment, but before I do that, anybody have any questions before we adjourn? Yes, Michael, go right ahead.
I just want to comment, Mary, David, Christina, I thought the staff report was very helpful, the way it was organized and the way you scrolled through and did that. So thank you. It looks like you guys have worked with your standard operating procedures. It makes it quite helpful for the board members, the committee members, to be able to see and understand the data that you're presenting. I just want to compliment you. I know, having worked at the agency, there's been a lot of talk about how to make these presentations more effective. You guys have done a great job with that, and I found it quite effective to be able to follow along today. So kudos to you and the staff for that.
Well said, Michael.
Mr. Kelly, thank you very much for that. This is David Gonzalez with TDLR. Our staff have benefited actually from the input of our advisory board members on what they want to see. Our enforcement division in particular has had lots of feedback from different advisory boards to give them different numbers. Our licensing division staff, customer service staff, we've received feedback. So if it improves, it's because of the input y'all provided. So thank you for that.
Fantastic, thank you. Nina, Sank, you had a question.
Yes, I was just a question. Will we get an update on the 87th legislative session in the next meeting? Especially if it's passed.
David Gonzalez with TDLR. I guarantee it will be in the executive report, Ms. Nina. I'm not sure I can guarantee we're going to be more up on it than you will, but we are going to try. We will at least try to keep up with you.
Okay. Well, should I hold you to that?
Yes, ma'am. And I commit to doing that unless Brian bumps me and he's in my place. But you already know he's first string. I'm the second string.
I don't know about that, but anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much, committee members. I really appreciate that, and staff of TDOR. Thank you so much. At this point, I adjourn. This meeting is adjourned at 12:45 p.m. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, everyone.